to welcome each of you to our meeting tonight. And the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the future of public education in the state of Alabama, and more importantly here in Marion County. For a Monday night and a very short notice, I think it's an outstanding statement to have the number of people that we have here tonight, and that tells me what public education means to you, or you would not be here. There's a million places you could be. You probably have children that are playing softball and baseball tonight. You have meetings, and you found it important enough to be here tonight, so I think that makes a tremendous statement on your behalf. We have our school board is here tonight, all 5 members. I've invited Senator Bedford and Representative Millican, and they're here with us tonight, and we'll let them make some comments about funding from a state level, and then I'll follow that up with comments about Marion County, and in particular the last 3 years, and you have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to be saying for the most part, and then maybe talk about some implications looking into FY12 that starts October 1, and the legislature is working on that budget starting this week. I think that's going to come up Wednesday in a committee meeting. So anyway, I'd like to ask Senator Bedford at this time to come to the microphone and make a few comments, and let's welcome him, please.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate you and the board inviting Representative Millican and I to be here, and so many of our friends and neighbors being out here on such an important issue. I started out on Susan Cobb's TV show this morning here in Marion County, and went back to Russellville, and back to Winfield to speak to the chamber, and then back to Hackleburg, back to Russellville, and after this I've got to leave out here because they kindly scheduled me a meeting at 6 o'clock here in Hamilton and 6 o'clock in Belgrade tonight. So I'm going to be a little late getting to that one, but I wanted to be here because education is important, not just to Hamilton and Marion County, but to our entire state and nation. Our children are our future, the greatest resource we have here in Alabama. And as we enter the 21st century, it's clear that the more a child learns, the more they're going to have an opportunity to earn. In the days of going to one job and working and staying there a lifetime, like when I was young, people wanted to go to the Ford plant in Tuscaloosa. Going to work there for 30 years or retired. Well, the Ford plant closed, and Reynolds Aluminum changed to Wise, and it's right through Marion County all the way to Mobile. Our whole economy is changing. So that means it's more important that our children have a good education, and that we support our teachers and support personnel in that. I want to give you just a brief overview about the state funding, some of the challenges we face, some of the misplaced priorities I think we see in this budget, and perhaps what some of the solutions are. First, what's the overall picture? Well, we've been through one of the worst recessions since the Great Depression that we've seen. Do you know that in our state, since 2008 through this current fiscal year, we're spending $1.5 billion less. $1.5 billion less on education because of the downturn in the economy. The good news for education is income tax and sales tax, as you know, are earmarked for education. That sees the first upturn in the economy, but it also sees the first downturn in the economy. And so it has hurt at the classroom level, it's hurt at the state level. And it's starting to impact the quality of education. I think that's one of the things Ryan and them want to bring your attention and talk with you about, as I do as well. I want to tell you that I'm disappointed so far in the direction of this new administration and new leadership. It seems to me that we've got the emphasis on the wrong side of the equation. All they've put forward so far is how to balance the budget on the backs of teachers and state employees by making them pay more rather than cutting at the top end, and I think that's wrong. They have a bill down there, by the way. I know we're talking about education, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the general fund too. They have a bill down there to take away all per diem from state employees and longevity pay, which means for the average state trooper today, you'd have a $3,000 pay cut. Well, they got the same thing working for teachers and other state employees, because right now the employee pays 5% of your retirement account. So what the state plans to do, if they have their way, the new leadership, which I hope they won't, they're going to make you pay more, up to 7.5% out of your pocket for your retirement. If you're a retiree, they're talking about almost doubling the cost of your health insurance premium down there. I talked to a lady today whose family coverage is $495. Under this plan, it'll go up to $895 a month. And she's on fixed income. She can't go out and get another job out there. And ladies and gentlemen, that's wrong. Let me tell you what I think we ought to be doing, and I'm going to do this briefly because I don't want to dominate the meeting. There's three areas that we ought to look at first. One is, let's grow new jobs, retain the ones we have. When you put people to work, they're paying taxes, your economy's growing. Two, let's look at what causes inequities in our tax base. One of the big areas is where the big mules run the program, and that is we have literally dozens and dozens of out-of-state corporations that, through employing a bunch of fancy CPAs and tax lawyers, pay less than you and I do on the hundreds of millions of dollars they make here in this state. That's wrong. We should close those corporate loopholes. Third, that's all right, you agree, that's fine. And third is this, because whether you realize it or not, it affects us almost as bad, not as bad, but almost as bad in Marion County as it does in Baldwin and Mobile County, and that's the BP oil spill and the harm that it caused to our economy and our coastline, and not just BP, but the other 12 multi-billion-dollar defendants that are down there. The state of Mississippi, the state of Louisiana, and other states are aggressively suing them, trying to recover the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of damage it's caused our school system. Alabama needs to get off the sideline and get in the game. Thank y'all for letting me be here tonight. I apologize that I've got to run, but you know my email, senbedford@aol.com, and my phone number is 256-627-2880 is my cell. And if you hadn't got it, ask your neighbor, because they've been calling. That's good. Thank y'all very much. God bless.
I fail to recognize Dr. Keith Davis, Superintendent from Winfield City, is with us here tonight to listen to some remarks by these two gentlemen and myself, and Tracy Estes, that serves on the board at Winfield City. And there's numerous other mayors and elected officials here, and I want to thank you for coming, as well as certainly our employees and our principals. It's going to be a very informative evening, I think, for you. Next, I'd like to introduce Representative Mike Millican.
Hi, y'all. It's a pleasure to be here with you and see this big crowd. When I turned in out there earlier, I said, I must be in the wrong place. There must be a ball game going on. But it shows, like Ryan said earlier, how much you think of public education and education here in Marion County and what it means to our children and grandchildren that here forever. We'd like to have a great education here and a great place to work and stay and live. It's been something over a 20-year period that I have supported education 100%. Every time that you've come to me with a bill in Montgomery, and so is Senator Bedford, we stand up for public education. We work hard for you every day trying to make sure that things doesn't happen. Folks, it's hard to follow a fellow like Senator Bedford. I've been trying to do it for years, but I always get to come second, and then he's already thanked every grandmother and every daughter and everybody else in the whole country and give all the figures that I could give, so it's hard to follow a man like him. He's very, very intelligent, and he knows what he's talking about, and I agree completely with him about the loopholes that we have in our tax system. And I was looking at 12 different bills, I think, today that may be proposed to stop those loopholes and would save $238 million for our education fund. But Ryan, the thing with that is we have a problem today. And if we do stop the loopholes, which I hope we do, And we stopped these big companies like Lowe's and others, and I won't name a big list of them, that are doing these things. It'll be years before we see money from them. The problem right now is here. 2 years ago, when we got the stimulus money, Governor Riley, he decided at one time that he wasn't going to take it. Well, he finally realized that we needed it, so we've actually lived off of that for 2 years, you might say. And then when it run out, everybody kept telling us when it runs out, it's going to be something. Well, I've never seen anything like it. I know the people in Marion County are hurting. The people all over Alabama and other states are hurting. This downturn in the economy is something I've never seen before in my 60 years. I've seen several small ones that happened, and I felt like that it hurt me and it was inconvenienced me in different ways and other people, but not like these. This is something that people don't have money, don't have the jobs to buy things with, then the economy goes down and our school system goes down. You know, I don't have the answer. I wish I did. I hope this week something comes of the budget and it's changed. Tell a little story about Ryan when he first was elected. Ryan came down to Montgomery and he was jumping about this high off the ground. Man, I can't take this. I can't take this budget. The governor has required the law to get us a budget within a few days after we go in session. Ryan's having a fit. I mean, he just, I can't do this. I said, Ryan, just settle down. This is not going to be it. You don't have to, this is not going to be the budget. Don't worry about it. Just hold on a few days. Well, that's what's happened for 20 years. That we go down every year in the budget, and the governor submits a budget, just like Bentley has submitted the one that cut 200 and something line items and cut everything from ice cream to peanut butter. But the legislature always took that budget and rewrote it. But just tell you the truth, I'm really concerned that this budget is going to be changed that much in committee. I wish I could tell Ryan, don't worry that this budget's not going to be what the governor sent down. But hopefully we can change it in different ways. But I've never seen a group of people in Montgomery that appears to just be looking for things to cut. It doesn't seem like they're looking for anything to help you in any way or to work things out or to compromise on anything. It's just cut. We don't have the money, so we're going to cut. Well, another thing that's happened in Montgomery for many years is people always, we've said we don't have money. But then all at once, somebody finds a pot over here with $200 million in it. It just so happened it was just over there. Well, it worked out. So people has come to think over the state that we're going to find that $200 million, but now it's gone. It's just not there. But it is something that we have got to work through. We've got to stay together and work for our students and our kids that we know that's got to have the best education. You know, we got some of the best teachers just a few weeks ago when we had the drop bill. I was speaking to you teachers and people that were in the drop. And, you know, the committee we come before the committee, and the very first ones that came up was Mal Moore from the University of Alabama. So I looked up and see what he's getting out of the drop. He's getting $800 and something thousand. It took 12 pages to go down to find the educator that was in that bill. And we were sold a bill of goods, and I accept full responsibility. When I thought drop was a good thing, I thought it was for our teachers. That's what it was sold to us. When there's 2,000 or 2,500 bills introduced, you can't read them all. You have to rely on people that you think that you can trust that will explain some of the things to you. And I honestly thought that bill was just for teachers. But it wasn't the teachers that the people that caused the problem in the drop. It was the people at the top end. You never hear anybody want to say anything about cutting the top end. It's always start from the bottom. And I don't believe that's right. I don't think they should. But I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can for education and do everything that I possibly can to make this budget a better budget and to work for it and just say this to you. God bless you and the people of Marion County, and we'll make it through. This too will pass. Thank you.
These two gentlemen that have spoken to you, I can tell you one thing, they are a very strong supporter of public education and working with them for the last 3 years. I've seen that firsthand. And you're right about that story, Mike. I was very upset going down a few years ago, and I'm still upset this time. But anyway, I hope it's better. Well, I've had the mission statement up here on the screen for this entire time, so we won't have to talk about that. That's the mission statement for Millican County School. And anytime that we're talking about our system, that's something that we certainly try to keep in mind as a superintendent and the board and administrator. The next slide is, I don't know if this is clear enough for you to see, but it's the Education Trust Fund, and you hear that talked about a lot, and I hate to interrupt, but I just saw our state school board member, Gary Warren, is here, and would like to welcome you as well, Mr. Warren. I just now noticed that. Didn't see you come in. Our budget is made up of, about 65% of our budget for Marion County Schools is made up from the state. The money that we receive from the state accounts for 65.5% of our budget. And that money comes from the Education Trust Fund. And of that trust fund, you hear a lot talked about sales tax, sales tax, sales tax. And that pretty much drives schools. Well, that's not really the case. It does, but it's not the major contributor. Income tax represents about 53% of the pie that goes into the trust fund. So with the unemployment rate being very high, that's had a significant impact upon the Education Trust Fund revenues. And you go to Walmart or you go to other places and you see folks shopping and buying, and you think, well, we should have money in the trust fund. But our unemployment rate continues to be very high. Sales tax is second at roughly 26% makeup of the trust fund. And then utility tax at 7%, other taxes at 9%, and use tax at 4%. And you take all that together and you add it up, and that makes up about 65% of our budget, give or take a few points from year to year for Marion County Schools. Now, Senator Bedford referred to the cut in the budget in the state of Alabama, in the education budget. And all these slides, I'm going to start out with FY08. So that would be from October 1 of 07 through September the 30th of 08. And there's two reasons I start with 08. Number one, it's the last year that we had a budget that was not prorated. Second, it just happened to be the first year that I sat in the chair as superintendent of the school system. So I'm going to go back and reference numbers from 08 through the current year that we're in now, which is FY11. And our education budget in 08 from the state education budget was $6.7 billion. And the 10 budget was $5.3 billion. So we have lost $1.4 billion in the state budget over a 2-year period. And I can't give you an FY11 number because we're not finished yet. That won't close until September the 30th, and right now we're operating under 3% proration, but that may change. Subject to change at any time. Just depends on the revenue. So we'll look at 10, and we see a 21% reduction in state funding. And that 21% makes up 65% of the budget for Marion County Schools. It's a very critical time for us. The next slide shows what the state requires our reserve to be. State law passed that says each school system has to have a 1-month reserve in the bank. And that law says that we have to have about $2.5 million in the bank. That covers our monthly payroll at about $2.15, and our average monthly accounts payable are about $350,000. So on an average month, we're spending about $2.5 million. We don't have that reserve. That's not met. We've not borrowed money. Unless something drastically changes, we won't borrow money through the end of this year. And I hope, depending upon the budget that's passed for 12 that begins October 1, we will not be in a position to borrow money there either. There's been some very difficult decisions made over the last several years, not just by members of this board or myself, but previous board members and superintendents that have allowed us to, I would say, live within our means, I guess would be a good way to put that, and not borrow a lot of money and have to make a lot of payments. So during these times, we're able to absorb that to a degree, and you'll see as we go through some other things that's helped us survive the last 3 years. Our budget that we receive is, for the most part, determined by the number of students that we have. And that's already been determined for FY12, and that takes into account, you look and see how many students are enrolled in your school the first 20 days after Labor Day. And going back to 2008, we had 3,707.3 students enrolled for those 20 days. And this past fall, which will determine our funding for the next year, we had 3,589.7. So we've lost students. And as you lose students, that students determine how many teachers that you earn. And the number of teachers that you earn determine a lot of other things that's in the formula. So that's very disturbing, and we'll see something later on that's even more disturbing than that. I have to stop here and say that this presentation that I put together is the most depressing thing I think I've ever done. It's very difficult to put it together, and I finished it yesterday. Our school board members have not even seen a lot of this information, so they're looking at it for the first time, and I hear them making comments back here behind me. I share it with them, but not cumulative like it has been presented today. And I just felt like you needed to be aware, and that's kind of the purpose of this meeting, is to make you aware of where we are and what we're facing and what we're about to be facing in the future. This slide was the worst thing I've ever put together on one page. This here goes back to 2008, and the state allocation for Marion County schools was $23,434,094. $23.4 million we received from the state in FY08. In FY09, we received $23.1 million. And underneath that, I have a number out to the right of $326,000. That's what it was reduced from the 08 level. When I came into office, that's the number we had. That was our 65% we received from the state. And in 1 year, that initial allocation was reduced $326,000, but revenues were not coming in as they should be. So the governor declared 11% proration. What that means was they withheld another $2.4 million for us in that year. So if they told you, all right, go make your budget, we're going to send you a $100 bill, and then you get in the middle of the stream and well, we're only going to send you 89, and you can't raise revenue, you can't generate any revenue, and you can't lay off any of your employees you're already in contract. And our budget is 84% salaries. So you can see what a bind that puts the school board in to try to absorb that 11%. And then FY10, our allocation was 21.6. We were reduced to $1.8 million from our 08 level that we're calling our base level. Last year we were not prorated. And then we had 7.5% prorated, and then an additional 2 added on right at the end during that last month. So that accounted for $1.95 million, another cut. And then the current year we're in now that began October 1, our budget was $20.6 million, which was $2.8 million less than the 08 allocation. And then we were currently under 3% proration, which was roughly another $590,000 cut. So if you go back to 08, when I first sat in that chair on July 1, 08, our budget was 23.4, and I look at what it's going to be if it doesn't change through September the 30th. Marion County Schools are going to have received $9.95 million less dollars over a 3-year period. Now that's hard to absorb. It was for me. And I think, what could we have done with almost $10 million in this county? You're talking about over a 3-year period. So $3.3 million per year. If you add up the proration part, just those 3 lines, you come up to $4.99 million. So you're looking at $5 million of that. About half of it was due to proration. In other words, we prepare the budget, we pass it, we hire folks based on that budget, and then we get $5 million cut out from under us. I want to go and look at, after this slide, most of you are sitting there with your mouth open. I want to go and look at a little bit deeper into about 3 areas within our budget that is very, we're taking a very severe hit in. One is something called other current expense, and that is, you hear the word OCE, if you've read the papers and you're talking about cutting OCE and those kind of things. We fund our support staff, salaries and benefits come out of this, and our utilities. And we don't have enough out of that to cover all those. That's what it's designed for, to pay support staff and utilities. And that is based upon, our allocation is based upon how many teacher units we have. And the number of teacher units you have based upon how many students you have. So it all goes back to the student. But in 08, we had 248.05 earned units. And per unit, in 08, we received $16,946 per unit. And it came out to $4.2 million. In 09, after the proration, we received $14,900 per teacher unit. So we lost $511,000 in OCE in 09. In 10, it was $15,200 per teacher unit. And we lost, from 08 level now, we lost $393,000. And FY11, the current year we're in, it's 14.7. So we've lost $588,000, and that totals up to about $1.5 million over 3 years. And the budget that I've seen is not yet passed, but the budget I've seen looks at 12, and it's funded on a level somewhere of $13,000, maybe $200 or $300 per teacher unit. So it's going to be a lot less, about $1,500 per teacher unit less than what we're currently funded. And we lost a few students. So, that will compound the issue. Next is transportation. And we operate 46 bus routes right now in this county. And a couple of years ago, we cut 7 of those routes. But currently we're running 46 routes, and I've got a slide a little bit later on to give you a little more information on that. In FY08, we had $1.7 million of transportation operations allocated from the state. In FY09, we had $52,000 less dollars. FY10, we had $408,000 less dollars. FY11, we had $425,000 less dollars. So if you add that up over the 3-year period, we lost $884,000 in transportation operations, and that would cover, supposedly, cover our employee costs in transportation. That would supposedly cover fuel, tires, filters, and any maintenance that would be required for buses. And we had an inspection a few months ago, and all of our buses passed inspection with no major problems, no major infractions. And I think the average, Keith, was average 3.4%. Was that about right, I think? So ours was 0, and we had no infractions. And that says what a good job our transportation department's doing with reduced funding. So they're making sure that the buses that your children are on are safe buses. I told y'all this was impressive. The next slide talks about Classroom Instructional Support Fund. And back in 2008, we get a sheet from the state that lists all these different line items. It's so much for this, so much for this, so much for this. And that money has to go to that line item. That's where it has to go, to state law. So we don't receive a lump sum of money and we decide how that goes. Very, very little local board discretion, and you'll see that here later as well. But in 2008, the legislature funded what's called Classroom Instructional Support money to this board at about $616,000. Now, that is to be broken down and used. You call it student material supplies, but most folks refer to it as the fee replacement money the teachers have. Classroom instructional supply money, they buy things for their classroom for your students to use, your children to use. That was funded at $130,228, and in the current year that we're in 11, and last year in 10, that was 0. Now, I'm here to tell you that we have teachers that have gone to Walmart and wherever, and they have bought items for their classroom. I know. I got a wife, and it's come out of my account, so I know. I know, and I'm seeing teachers nod their head that they have out of their pocket gone and provided a lot of that anyway. So I want to certainly commend you for that. Technology was funded at $86,800, and that's at 0. Library enhancement was $49,600 at 0. Professional development money was zeroed out. And textbooks. Now, textbooks in 2008 were funded at about $75 per student for a textbook. And you're lucky if you can buy a textbook for $75. All right? And I see principals nodding their head. They're more expensive than that. Well, currently, we're funded at $15.15 per textbook. Last year, it was the same thing. Now, I've not seen the breakdown of what it would be for next year, proposed for next year, and I'm not aware of what that may be. But you can't buy a textbook for $75. You sure can't buy one for $15. So we're about to face some serious issues with textbooks. We've got some that need to be replaced, and the money's not available to replace those. But you add all that up in 1 year. The classroom instructional support money, there was a decrease of $558,000. And it was the same decrease last year, so you're looking at over $1 million in the last 2 years. Now, I think the budget that I saw had teacher materials and supplies in there for, I believe it was $100. I'm not sure. I think that's what I saw initially. All right, now, we were talking about students, how important they are. The students in each community school determines by divisors, and that's the number that the state uses to determine how many teachers are to be provided based on the number of students at that grade level. Each community here at school, and I've abbreviated, try to get it on one screen, and I apologize, I know there's no way most of you here can see this. The first column is the school, the second column is the earned units, and I mean, that's the money that the state is providing for. That's the state earned allotment for that school. And in the second column is actually what's in place at that school. For example, Breeden Elementary earns from the state 11.65 teacher units. This board currently has in place 11.83 teacher units. So they're over by 0.18. The board funds over by roughly about 2/10 than what the state allows money for. Now you look at all these, and you can look at each school. The board is funding all those over just by a little bit than what the state provides funds for, except for Hamilton High School, and they're at earned 24.58, and the board funds them at 24.5, so they're under about 800s. Now these numbers do not include the following units. These are state funding units. They do not include Title I teachers. All of our elementary schools are Title I schools. Our middle school is a Title I school. And we currently have 15 teachers employed as Title I teachers. So that number would be added back over here to the total per school. We have 3 federal class size reduction units in place. One at Hackleburg Elementary, one at Phillips Elementary, and one at Ginn Elementary. We employ 9 counselors, 9 librarians, and principals and assistant principals. And we have 5 reading coaches in place, one at each elementary school. And that's not reflected in that total number here for each community school. So you add all those tenths up, and we have 1.73 teacher units over what the state supplies that the board pays for. And I say the board, it's out of there, it has to be out of local money because there's no state money for that. This number in 2001 was 26. Is that correct? I believe you're on the board nodding your head. And there was 21 teacher units cut in 2001, and some of y'all remember that because the funds were gone. It was a similar situation, so the board made a decision to reduce that, and as a result, they had to. If not, they could not afford. And you look across and you watch the news and you see school systems that have gone to the bank. Some are tapped out. They won't loan them any more money. And sometimes it's for some reason. Sometimes it's for those cuts were not made. So that was a very difficult decision in 2001 to make. But it's allowed us to keep from going to the bank, and we have some money there now. And you say, how do you get 11.65 teachers in an elementary school? All right. Well, we have part-time teachers. We share teachers from school to school to try to make sure we get in place what's required by the state. And this slide shows by school the number of teachers that are shared or either hired as part-time. I also included librarians and counselors because each of our elementary schools, by SAC standards, earns a half a counselor unit except for Hamilton Elementary by the number, and they earn 1. So you share those, and some of our librarians are only earned about half because of the number of the students in that school. Whatever they earn from the state is what we have in place. And you look at the numbers of personnel that are shared between schools. Now, and you try to sit down as a high school principal and make a schedule out like Mr. Johnny Hardman, and he's sharing 6 units. And you're sharing that with another school, and it may be Jack Hayes, and I know I saw him here. He's sharing teachers, all right, with another school, and I saw Ricky Sizemore, all our high school principals are here, and they're sharing teachers, and they're trying to make their schedule work, and also make it work with when that teacher is going to be there. And with 6 teachers, that's an extremely difficult thing that this board has asked them to do, but financially, it's what's required. I went to a superintendent meeting at the end of February and was given a packet of information that showed that when I say that the Marion County Board of Education doesn't have a lot of money available at their discretion to use out of local funds, matter of fact, they rank 125th out of 132 school systems. There's 132 school systems in Alabama, and Marion County ranks 125th. They have at their discretion $379 per student that they get to decide where that money goes. Now, it is per pupil. So, even though you look at your local revenue that's in, and you look at the number of students that you have, Lamar County may actually have less revenue, but they've got less students than we do, so their number's going to be higher. So Lamar County has $575 per student. Franklin, I tried to put your neighbors on here so you could relate to some systems around you. Some of you work in other systems in other counties, or you have relatives, and I know you talk and you hear things. Franklin County has $602 available. Winston County $706, and you can look at those. Winfield has $964 available per student. Hannibal City $1,057. But the top was Homewood City. Homewood City's board has $5,545 per student above and beyond what the state funds. But they get to decide what's in the best interest of their students and how to promote and make sure that their mission statement is achieved. So I took that number and I said, well, if Marion County was funded at the level that per student that Lamar County was funded, we'd have an extra $714,000 that our board could decide what was in the best interest of the students in Marion County. Franklin County, at that level, we would have $813,000. Winston County would have $1.2 million. Benton County $1.2. Winfield City would have $2 million. Hannibal City, you can see those. Homewood City, if we were funded at the level per student, at the local board discretion, we would have $18.8 million to spend. I don't know what I'd do if I had $18 million to spend. It'd be hard to figure out. Very frustrating.
Are you saying that extra is coming from the local income?
Local revenue. That's correct. All right, looking at the 12 budget that the governor's recommended, I've looked at two areas. I've looked at OCE, and our current allocation was $3.7 billion. The estimate that I've seen, and that may change according to what Mike and Roger said, it does change sometimes when you get into committees and amendments and so forth are added to the budget, but the way I understand it now, we would receive funds of about $3.2 million. So we would be cut about another additional $500,000 from the level that we're currently receiving. And I've already showed you back a few slides ago what's happened since 2008. Well, I see that what we're funding in OCE is fixed. I mean, it's utilities. We have made improvements to a lot of our schools. We've made them more energy efficient. We've been very conscious about lights and water, wasting dollars going down the drain. Yeah, there's still improvements to be made, you bet. Are there still lights left on? I hope not, but probably. All right, so and we've seen utility rates go up. But I say that's a fixed cost. And our support staff, we're pretty much operating at what I consider to be the minimum, or the bare bones, the essential. So that's almost a fixed cost. So where are you going to come up with $500,000 to continue to pay your light bill and your gas bill? And there's no heat on in here tonight. That's not. I don't think the heaters are working, but anyway, those kind of things. How are you going to continue to pay those? Those costs are going to come in, and their water department's going to want to be paid. I know there's several mayors I've seen here tonight. They're going to want us to pay our bill. Transportation would be cut about $47,000 from where it's funded right now, and it's funded at about a 75% level. Is where it's funded now. The money we receive this year in transportation will not cover the cost of our employees that we're currently running right now. So we'll have another 47,000 cut out of transportation. We will be short if this passes by $88,000 in just paying employee costs for next year in transportation. And the last fuel bill I signed was $3.19 a gallon because we don't have to pay the taxes on that diesel fuel. And the budget that I understand is proposed for 12 is built on $3.44 a gallon for diesel fuel. I hope that's as high as it is come October 1, but the way it's going, we really don't know. So that's a variable that we can't put our hands around. We'll be operating at about $506,000 short in transportation. And like I told you a few minutes ago, we cut 7 bus routes 2 years ago. And I'll show you, coming up next year. And I know we have a lot of buses. If you pass on the road, you say, well, there's not many kids on that bus. They need to cut that route, save that money, don't pay that driver, fire that driver. All right, well, we did that 2 years ago with 7 routes. But I got the counting up. In our school system that we serve, we have 7 red lights. 7. That tells you how rural we are. 7 red lights in all the towns that we have schools, total. At 6 o'clock in the morning, we have 12 buses on the road already. And they can't unload till 7:30. We have some that don't get to school till 7:35, 7:40. So we run 12 buses at 6 o'clock in the morning. At 6:15, we have 27 buses on the road. So that means for the bus that runs at 6 o'clock, that driver is running an hour and a half route in the morning, and an hour and a half route in the afternoon. 6:15, we have 27 buses that are running at least an hour and 15-minute route. And at 6:30, we have 45 all but one. We have one special needs bus that runs later than that. So for the most part, we have all of our buses on the road an hour, so you're running an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, at least. So looking at that, where do you cut additional bus route? Who wants their child to be on the bus before 6 o'clock in the morning? Those are very, very, that's almost fixed. I was asked a question by a bus driver about 2 months ago. Well, if the state does this and if the state does that, what are you going to fund? Where are you going to cut routes? I can't. I mean, we cut 7. There's no way we can cut another route. How have we been able to survive this $10 million cut in 3 years? Well, there's been 3 real big things that have helped us. The first, there was a state bond issue in FY07. And we spent the first of that money in FY08. And it was for capital improvements. All these repairs that we've been making, renovations the last 3 summers, that's where this money's been coming from. We received $3.2 million for that. Could only be used for that. We have less than $100,000 left of that money left. Essentially, it's gone. The second area was a federal jobs bill that we received news of this past summer. We had $756,000 that we received, and we put 20 bus drivers in that. I told you we were underfunded in transportation. We put 20 bus drivers' salaries in that jobs bill. The rest of them were custodians that we placed in there. That will not be here. That was a 1-year deal. September the 30th, it's gone. And the last was the federal stimulus money that we received for Title I that was used at our elementary schools and used at our middle school. That's a Title I school. That was $937,000. And for the most part, we upgraded technology. And those 6 schools had some money for copiers, and paper, those type things. Well, after September the 30th, that's gone. They'll be just like what the high schools have had to deal with. You add that up, and that's $4.9 million. That's roughly half of the cut that we received for the last 3 years. So the net effect has been about $5 million, I would say. as opposed to the 10. So that's helped us survive that. Now, I heard, if you watched the news, probably 2 weeks ago, the State Superintendent of Education came out and said, well, we need to cut a couple of professional development days for teachers and support staff to save some money, and then we need to raise advisors across the board by 0.5. So what that means, if you're high school, grades 9 through 12, your divisor is 18. You get a teacher for every 18 students you have. It'll be 18.5. So there seems to be, that seems to take hold a little bit, and I've heard some talk about it. First, Dr. Bentley was opposed to it, but he seems to be receptive from what I've heard. He spoke in FET last week and commented on that. So what I did is look and I said, well, what's that going to mean to Marion County if that takes hold? Now, we've lost some students, so we're going to lose a few teachers anyway because of a loss of enrollment. So I looked at it and said, well, if the divisor goes up by 0.5, what's that really mean to us if that's what passes? Well, that means the state will fund us for about 10.5 teachers less than we have right now. That takes into account the loss of a few because of enrollment and then because of the increase in the divisor. So there'll be about 10.5 less teachers employed in our system. And this board by law will continue to place teachers where they are earned, at the schools that they're earned. That's the law. The requirements that this board offer will not change. You still have to offer the same thing for the high schools, the 4x4 curriculum. That still must be offered. And you already seen the list of how many teachers are being shared. Almost an impossible task. Class sizes will be larger. Less teachers, same number of students, they're going to be larger. Some electives may be cut from the regular school day. If it's not required, it would be on the table as something this board would have to look at. Currently, students in grades 9 through 12, that's 9th grade, you start earning credits, you have to have 24 to graduate. They're offered 7 credits a year. You may not have the teachers to offer 7. You may only get to offer 6. They can still graduate, but they would not have the 24, above the 24 minimum. So if you were only offered 6 and you had a child that failed a class, then they're going to have to go to summer school to be promoted to the next grade, because in high school, you've got to have 6 credits the first year to be a 10th grader, 12 to be an 11th grader, and so forth. Now, talk about OCE. OCE, that number, the slide I had it before, you multiply the number of teacher units by $13,200 for this next year. If the advisors change, that changes the number of teacher units you earn. That changes your OCE. In other words, an increase in divisor, which lowers your teachers, also cuts your support staff and cuts the money that you have available to pay for utilities. So a divisor kind of gets a little of all of it, and it really puts a strain on us being able to try to continue to provide the education that you want for your children. What are the challenges this board faces? I didn't feel like I had to write them down, but I wanted to make a point. We've seen and continue to see reduced state funding. We've seen reduced local funding. I give a report every month at the board meeting about local sales tax and how we've been, this year, we've been really right on the line, about 0. So, I mean, up $1 is good news. But this past month, we were up $28,000 in February sales tax collections. That's fantastic. That was great. We hope we see that continue. But cumulatively, we've seen reduced local funding, the loss of the federal stimulus funds. With all this going on, we continue to meet increased goals in reading and math by the No Child Left Behind law. Those levels continue to go up, and the teachers are nodding their heads. Yes, they are. We continue to meet those, even with $10 million less dollars. I want to remind you that Marion County Schools is one of the 30 systems in Alabama that have the minimum required 10 mil property tax. If you've seen the slide a few minutes ago, we rank 125th out of 132 school systems in the money available per student that this board has the discretion where to spend that. There are numerous, too many to list and go over, mandates from the state level and from the federal level that have no money attached to that, unfunded mandates. Our local schools have seen a tremendous decrease in the funds they have available to spend that they would have need at their school because of decreased sales of concessions. Where guidelines have changed, they had to change what they offered to sell for their students. Some of those things that they sell are not very popular, so the students are not buying those. So their revenue that they have, the things that they had normally provided for at the local school level, those funds are not there. A reminder that we have no authority, the Board of Education has no authority to generate revenue and has no authority to reduce any taxes. So you play with the cards that you're dealt for the most part. There's something called maintenance of effort. In this next slide, or next point, there's a minimum amount of money that has to be spent from our local money and state money for career tech and for special education. Regardless if you're in proration or state funding level decreases, you've got to still meet that threshold this board has to meet. Very, very big challenge. This next point is, I mentioned a few minutes ago about student enrollment. Since 1999, we have lost 323.31 students in our school system. We have lost students in 11 of the last 13 years. And that drives our funding. Everything hinges off that. So, a tremendous challenge for this board. At a meeting I went to at the end of February, the last sheet of paper in the packet was a school closure survey. It said, fill this out. If you plan on or have closed a school, who are they and how many are they? This sheet of paper that I received the other day has 49 schools listed on here across the state that have either already closed or proposed to be closed. There is not one school on here from Marion County. When you see 49 schools across the state that have either already closed or are about to close, it's a rather sobering thought. We look at, and we're fun, we don't have any local money for the most part, so we're funding our schools at what the state's providing. So for us to close a school, the state's providing the money for that school. We're not saving any money by closing the school. So, I've heard all kind of rumors from Friday to today and Sunday at church and about what all's going on, and I'm so glad that I already had this meeting scheduled with all the talk that's there. Now, all this is very, 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 very depressing. Before I move into some good news, I guess this is good news. The board has, I'd say over the last 10 years, tried to position itself to be financially sound and good stewards of tax dollars by the following. This board has a very small amount of debt. We have a $115,000 yearly payment from some past renovations that were done. We have a $361,000 a year bus payment that is subsidized by fleet renewal money that we receive from the state. Not quite enough to cover that, but it covers a majority of it. We're currently less than 2 teacher units over for the entire system. We have cut staff and salaries at the central office to save over $105,000 out of state funds. We've cut 7 bus routes 2 years ago. And there are, as some of you already know, there are some electives that are not offered at your local school because of the number of teacher units that you earn, and you have to teach what's required. So, but with those things in place, you know, I feel like we have positioned ourselves in about as good a place as we could be to stand the brunt of what's about to come. Now, from a national level, we need some good news after all this. From a national level, the dropout rate has been declining since 1972. The dropout rate has also been declining in Marion County. Senator Bedford talked about graduation and how important education is. But in Marion County, our graduation rate has increased. It's currently at 81%. Is it as high as we want it to be? No. We're going to work to get it higher. And our teachers are working, our administrators are working, and we're going to continue to work that, to try to improve that. But currently it's at 81%. Those go hand in hand, the completion rate and the dropout rate. Certainly if that's down, the completion rate is higher. Now I will say one thing, this is a good time to bring it up. The graduation rate, the way that's calculated, is changing. So you're going to see a lot of our high schools' graduation rate go way down here in the next year. Doesn't mean they had more dropouts, but they're going to look, and the formula now says you've got 4 years to graduate. A student enters the 9th grade, and they're, statistically wise, they're a dropout if they don't complete their high school diploma in 4 years. So that's not been the case. It's been the case. They're there until they drop out. But that's the national governor's formula. In the majority of states will be following that. So you can kind of compare the graduation rate in Alabama to the graduation rate in Texas, or whoever's interested in that. So that's going down, and a little bit of explanation. How are public schools doing? Public NAEP scores, which is a national test that is administered to some of our 4th grade students and some of our 8th grade students. And nationally in math, NAEP scores in the 4th and 8th grade have never been higher than they are today. That's a good thing. Our NAEP scores for this nation in reading in 4th and 8th grade have never been higher than they are today. And there's several parents out here. As a nation, what are the parents' attitudes toward the schools? 77% of America's parents gave the school their oldest child attends either an A or a B. In the last 25 years, those scores have continued to improve. They're as high as they have ever been. Now, that's national. How about Marion County? We're looking at, with No Child Left Behind, we are measuring reading and we're measuring math in grades 3 through 8 and then the 11th grade with our high school graduation exam. In 2008, the reading proficiency average in our county was 83.0. In 2010, the last numbers that I have to share with you, it was 85.9. We have seen a gain of 2.9 points in proficiency, which was equivalent to a 3.5% gain in reading scores over a 2-year period. Looking at the same thing in math, you see a 4.9% gain in math scores over that same 2-year period. That's the same period almost the same period that we've lost $10 million to. So I think this is a time to thank our teachers, our administrators, and our support staff. If you're an employee of the Marion County Schools, would you stand up, please? Thank you very much. Certainly the students have a lot to do with that, but you have a tremendous amount to do with that, those results. And thank you for that, even though we've seen our funding cut tremendously. I'd already mentioned that in February, another part of the good news is we had $28,000 increase in local sales tax. That's fantastic. We hope that trend continues. What can you do? I mean, that's the bottom line. What can you do? You know where we are. I hope your head's spinning like mine was when I put this together, but you know where we are. And as Mr. Miller reminded me before this meeting started, he said, you always keep saying the same thing. We're going to have school. We're just going to have a little less money to operate on. So, that's true. Number one, I'd say support local businesses. How does that help our school? Well, it helps our school with sales taxes. Those sales tax revenues come straight to us, or they go to Montgomery to be distributed through the Education Trust Fund. That is a tremendous benefit. Now, we also we have 3 towns that have a sales tax on just for their schools. And I know Tracy ran a story in the paper a few weeks ago to mention those. Brilliant, Ewan, and Hackleburg that have a sales tax on, and that money goes straight, bypasses my office and goes straight to that school and straight into that classroom. That's tremendous. The next point is to support state business. Now we talk about you remember that pie chart I had up earlier of the trust fund, and 53% of that was from income taxes. Well, if we buy from folks in state, they're able to hire people, keep employees, and they pay income tax to the state. So it's very important that we spend our dollars in Alabama because of sales and income tax. Next point, get involved with support groups for schools, and I'd say PTOs, boosters, civic groups. You know, you go into any town and any community here in this county, and you don't have to look very far to see something that a booster club has done, a PTO group has provided, whether it's playground equipment or they've raised money to build a building, pay off some kind of note, buy uniforms, pay for copier lease, buy paper for the school. We have a lot of civic groups that are stepping in to fill the gap. We have individuals in this county that are stepping in to make donations and fill that gap, and they're certainly to be commended. The next point is to encourage your children. Go ahead, that's great. They need to be encouraged on a daily basis. Our employees need to be encouraged. This time of the year, they're pulling their hair out, some of them, and I know you parents are as well. Next point, call on legislators. Now, Roger talked about something about closing the loopholes with some corporate loopholes where we have, and if you watched 60 Minutes last night on CBS, a part of that talked about multinational companies that go to a couple of countries overseas and put their headquarters and avoid paying corporate taxes here in the United States. That's also going on at the state level. And the School Board Association put an article out a few weeks ago, I guess, when I read it, talking about that, where there's a couple of states here in the United States that you can go have your headquarters as a corporation, and your tax rate's a whole lot lower. But I understand, Mike, what you said, there's several bills that will address that, and hopefully those revenues will get placed into the trust fund. The last point I want to make is I want you to be a voice, and I see signs up tonight, and certainly your presence here, and I hope the paper and the little cameras have recorded the number of folks that are here. I had no idea this many folks would be here. I mean, if it was full, it's a big screen as a house, and we've just been out of luck. But they wouldn't have changed anything, but certainly you've made a tremendous statement. I want you to continue to be a voice for public education. I want you to continue to be a voice for the community, your community school, wherever you live. There's 5 communities in this county. You've got to make it work. You've got to become involved with a civic group. You've got to become involved with a group that supports the school. You see the gap, you see the need. That's going to continue to be there for the next several years, I'm afraid. So we're going to continue to have school. I can promise you that. We're going to need you to be involved to continue to support us. Now, I want to make a couple other points, and I'm going to shut up. My mouth's very dry. I'm having a hard time talking. There is you'll be receiving on the way out the door a list of legislators for you to talk. Now, I will tell you that, you're welcome to call and write and send letters to Mike and Roger, but they're with you. So their name's on here, but they're with you in public education. I need you to focus on the other folks that are on this list and let them know your thoughts about the funding for public education and what you're facing here in Marion County. So get this list, and I need you to do that if you can before Wednesday. You need to send an email, make a phone call before Wednesday. Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, the education budget is going to be taken up in the House Ways and Means Committee. So any kind of, and then it'll be out on the floor. We may have a budget in the next week and a half, possibly. So it's critical that we get our message out. So that we'll pick that up on the way out. Now I know I am, and I figure most people in here, in this room tonight, are a product of public education. You're where you are because of public education. More than likely, public education here in Marion County. Now I look around, I see some folks that are not from Marion County, but for the most part, I think folks here are products of public education in Marion County. Myself and the Board of Education has tried, with all this, has tried to protect classroom instruction while continuing to operate our schools in our 5 communities. And I think, for the most part, with what you've seen, I hope you agree that we have been successful at trying to protect the instruction that goes on in the classroom and shelter that from all the cuts that you've seen so far. However, as we go forward, we're going to have your help and your voice to our legislators, the folks that make the laws, and determine how much money we receive. With the current legislation that's there, this is going to be a slow recovery. The Rolling Reserve Act passed, and what that means is the legislature is not going to be able to spend more money than we took in the previous year, except looking at a whole lot of things, but the average growth will be taken into account, and any excess has to go into certain funds and so forth. So with all that in place, even though we recover economically, it's going to be a long pull to get out of this thing. That's why I'm saying our voice is going to be very important, and you need to be involved and fill some holes and try to help us with our funding. Now, if you by your presence here tonight, and I think if you're agreeing with the most of the things I'm saying, and I need you to make a commitment to be a voice and a continued voice for public education in Marion County. And if you feel like making that commitment, will you please stand up? That is tremendous. Now, with this number of folks that are in here, I expect the phones to be ringing off the hook in Montgomery tomorrow. It's fantastic. If you make a commitment to try to contact somebody tomorrow, continue standing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You can be seated. Thank you. I have been to Montgomery once, was there last Tuesday, and will continue to go, and I'll continue to express my opinion about how things are going to impact schools in Marion County. And what I usually do is I take something there and I'll hand it to Mike or I'll hand it to Roger or whoever will listen, And I'll say, hey, this decision here, this is how it's going to impact Marion County. This is the funding that we'd lose, or this is what we'd be able to do, this is what we'd not be able to do. And I'll continue to do that. I mentioned, I want to remind you that the House meets Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, and please make those contacts before then. If we're going to make that handout available as folks leave, and that information is on the website as well, the state website. You can look and get information. My number at the office is 921-3191. It's in the phone book. Anytime you have a question, call me. My door is open. I'm not always there, but you can call and we'll schedule an appointment to talk about your concerns about schools in Marion County. And again, I want to reiterate my feelings, and I'll speak for the board as well. We will continue to try to protect classroom instruction in every community. Marion County is real special to me, and I believe it's special to you, or you wouldn't be in here tonight. And when you have an opportunity to make the decision on where you want to live and where you want to raise a family, for whatever reason, if you're sitting in here tonight, you decide that's Marion County. I think it's a fantastic place to raise a family. I think we have a good school system. Are there things that we need to work on and improve? You betcha. Yeah, sure there are. And we're doing those. I hope we're working toward that on a daily basis. I need you. Man, I don't know any other way to say that. I need you. The students need you. We need you to be involved. We need you to be loud in Montgomery. Mike and his buddies need to hear from you and know what you expect from the state on providing education to Marion County. If you have any questions of me or the board, feel free to contact me at the office. But I want to thank you for your presence tonight. It is a tremendous statement. Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.